We live in a society where it's okay to work ourselves to death. We know no other way. We're always working towards exhaustion. That's kind of the end-all be-all. That's the goal. But what a lot of us don't realize is that by working ourselves so much, we may not be working ourselves to death, but we're definitely working ourselves into something called adrenal fatigue. And I wanted to do this video because I want to share with you 3 simple yet effective ways that you can combat adrenal fatigue. But I also want to explain what adrenal fatigue really is and how it's affecting your day-to-day life, not only in the office, not only at home, but in the gym and when it comes to getting in the best shape. You see, when we're stressed out, our bodies have a natural response. And like you've seen in many of my other videos, our bodies release that hormone called cortisol. Cortisol is fine and dandy. It does what it's supposed to do. It elevates our blood pressure and it gets us prepared for that fight or flight response, that adrenaline response, that noradrenaline response. Now, those neurotransmitters and those hormones are imperative. They're crucial to our success and survival. We really need them. But the problem is when we have these chronic bouts of stress, when we're constantly exhausted, we're constantly fatigued, and we're constantly stimulating ourselves with caffeine and other stimulants, it makes it so that our bodies cannot really recover from being in that stressed out state. This wreaks havoc on what's called the adrenal glands. Now, you know, the adrenal glands are what create epinephrine, norepinephrine, adrenaline, noradrenaline, and that again is critical to survival. But when they're constantly having to pump out adrenaline, they too get fatigued, just like everything else in our body. And what happens when your adrenal glands stop working effectively? Well, you're no longer producing those hormones that you need, which means you have a hard time waking up. You have a hard time getting any kind of rise at all. So some of the symptoms of adrenal fatigue are going to be simple fatigue, general overall feelings of malaise, sleep problems, lack of sex drive, and a lack of drive and motivation altogether. If you've ever woken up in the morning and feel like you just need a cup of coffee, like coffee is what's going to pull you out of that slump, well, that's what it feels like to have adrenal fatigue, except it's happening all the time. And sometimes the only way to fix it is to have a little bit of an artificial stimulant like caffeine or some kind of thing like a Monster or a Rockstar energy drink that's going to perk you up. But there are some ways around that. There's some ways that you can naturally stimulate your adrenal glands to get pumping again so that you don't have to rely on those external factors. So let's dive into what you can do. The first one is what I call an adrenal cocktail. This is one of my favorites, and I will tell you, as someone that has worked in a corporate setting and also as an entrepreneur myself, I know exactly what it's like to slave a lot of hours and beat yourself up all the way to the point of exhaustion. So I've used this cocktail specifically when I was going through a period of stress. And what you're going to do is you're going to take about 4 ounces of orange juice. Now with that 4 ounces of orange juice, you're going to take a 1/4 teaspoon of what's called cream of tartar. Now cream of tartar, you may have used it in cooking, you've seen it on the shelves before and nobody ever really knows what to do with it, but it's exceptionally rich in potassium. And that potassium from the cream of tartar is going to react with the vitamin C in the orange juice, which is going to lower cortisol levels. You see, vitamin C has been shown time and time again to reduce those cortisol levels. If we can lower the cortisol levels, then we can lower the impact on the adrenal gland, give it a little bit of a break. Now there's one more thing you're going to add to that cocktail. You're going to add some Himalayan pink salt. The reason you're going to add the Himalayan pink salt is because when you have adrenal fatigue, what happens is your body starts excreting a lot of the natural sodium that you need through your urine. So when your adrenals are taxed, your body is less efficient at modulating the potassium, the sodium, and the magnesium that it needs to function. So by adding Himalayan pink salt, you take some of the stress off of the adrenal gland, off of the kidneys, and give them a chance to recover a little bit. Now the important thing is that you have this adrenal cocktail first thing in the morning. You see, your cortisol levels are already at their highest in the morning. So if you can combat them with this adrenal cocktail, you're going to get a lot more benefit first thing so that your body is receptive to it than you would, say, later in the day. Now the next one I want to talk about is a supplement that I have talked about before, and that is called ashwagandha. Now ashwagandha is what's called an adaptogen. Adaptogens do just like the name implies. They help us adapt to things. Now what ashwagandha does specifically is it helps level off some of the biochemical levels within our body. What that means is it's going to help our mental state balance with our physical state, meaning we're going to be able to respond better to stress. And one of the main ways that ashwagandha does this is by increasing something that is called GABA. Now GABA is a neurotransmitter and it's critical to human function. But what GABA does is it blocks signals between nerve cells. Now it doesn't do this with all nerve cells, but it specifically decreases the impact of cortisol on those nerve cells. So ashwagandha, as I've talked about in other videos related to stress, can single-handedly help your body adapt to stress much, much better. All you need to do is take a small amount of ashwagandha and wait about a week, and it's going to start having a cumulative effect. So over time, you're going to have a better biochemical response to stress. Now, lastly, I want you to start taking some fish oil pills. Now, I sound like a broken record because I always talk about omega-3s. But the cool thing about fish oil pills is there is some legit science that is backing up the fact that they reduce your cortisol levels. And at the end of the day, if we can lower those cortisol levels, we can take the stress off the adrenal gland. If cortisol levels aren't telling the adrenal glands to produce more adrenaline, it gives the adrenal glands a chance to recover. In fact, according to the Diabetes Metabolism Foundation, it was found that those that took 7.2 grams of fish oil, that's about 7 fish oil pills per day, had a dramatically reduced level of cortisol directly correlated with mental stress, in this particular case based from a career, than those that didn't. What this shows is that fish oil has a direct effect on lowering the body's response to stress as it pertains to mental stressors, home life, family life, work, etc. And last but not least, if you really want to give your adrenal glands a break, lay off the stimulants. Okay? I'm talking about coffee, I'm talking about tea, I'm talking about things like that in excess. Now, you know from my other videos, I say that coffee is okay, tea is okay, but in moderation. If you start having an overabundance of that in your life and in your day-to-day, you're going to exhaust those adrenal glands. You need to take a little bit of a break, implement some of the tricks that I just showed you in this video, and in a couple of weeks, your adrenals will be pumping again, and you'll notice that you won't have as much fatigue, the sex drive will come back, and your overall levels of motivation will begin to prosper again. As always, thanks for keeping it locked in here on my videos, and I will see you in the next one.